I've been working in this Minecraft world for 4,750 days. That's nearly 1,000 hours of playtime. Here's the problem. I'm building Hogwarts Castle from Harry Potter, and at my current pace, I'm estimating it will take me 4 years to complete. That's too long. Here is my solution. Build more faster. How will I do this? Normally, this clock tower would probably take me about a month to complete, but in this video, I'm going to record 50 full Minecraft days in 1 week with the goal to complete the clock tower. Can we finish this build in time? What do you think? This clock tower is one of the most iconic buildings in all of Hogwarts, so I want to do it justice. However, currently I am out of mud bricks, which we'll be using for the bottom of the gradient on the castle. So first thing we need to do is to travel to the mangrove swamp and get ourselves some mud. Now normally I would spend a bit more time and get a bunch of mud shulker boxes, but in this case we have so much to do in 50 days and not enough time to do it, so I limited myself to just over 2 shulkers of mud, which should be plenty for the clock tower. When I got back, I used a majority of the stores of wheat I had to create packed mud and mud bricks, the blocks of choice for this project. And in the morning, we began the building journey. As you can see, I have already filled a few of these walls in, but I left the back one unfinished, which is why I decided to tackle that head on. I wanted this tower to be completely finished by the end of these 50 days. Is that possible? Watch to the end to find out, I suppose, because I honestly have no idea. Not only do we have many different types of blocks going into this wall, but also lots of them are non-farmable. It's a frustrating way to build, but I think the gradient I came up with looks okay at least. It means I have a lot of material gathering chips to deal with, but hey, it breaks up the monotony of placing block after block on these walls. One of the more annoying block types I decided to use is gray wool, and unfortunately, I have not made a fully automatic farm, which is honestly on me. I should absolutely have done that by now, but I unfortunately get a little lazy to make critical farms sometimes, which can definitely slow me down. In fact, tell you what, if we hit 100 likes on this video, I'll make a wool farm in the next 100-day video. 5 days in, I was thinking about how this couldn't just be a flat wall, and there's not a lot of photos out there of the back side of the tower. Then I remembered I have Hogwarts Legacy, so I hopped on there, took a little fly around it. I must say the details they put in here are beautiful. Unfortunately, I missed a humongous flaw in how I built this wall. I will address that later. It's a never-ending trip back and forth for materials on these humongous walls. I also like to look back at what I've already done for some inspiration. Ooh, looks like I caught a little friend. Hey there, little buddy. Bobby looking after you? Aside from the blunder I still hadn't noticed on the wall, the tower is looking okay. The sides of the tower are interesting. It's almost completely a flat wall, give or take some windows on the outside. So I spent a bit of time filling up the wall all the way to the roof, and I still haven't noticed my grand mistake I see. Have you seen what it is yet? I must admit I have a problem with using my free cam mod to zoom out and get a fly around view too often. I love to look at my work too much. There's probably a solid 2 to 3 days of footage in here just flying around it, but you must admit the build is looking all right. Anyway, I finished up another side of the wall, filled in the back as well, and those bad boys took a lot longer than I might have expected. When I referred to my reference photos, I noticed that there was a bit of a trim detail that I was missing, so I first put in some shadow with some tuff along the top front edge, and then I tried out some different stair patterns to see what would look best. I ended up deciding on this pattern here. I also knew I was going to need some more deep slate. I was going to move this whole beacon to go get more deep slate, but then I decided better of it and realized I could just make a new one and just take the beacon block and move that instead. I spent a good amount of time early on in this world building this gold farm. It's been invaluable for both XP and, like in this case, for gold. I hadn't emptied it in a while, so I was able to get all the gold I needed for a few beacons, in fact. And I knew just where I'll put the first one. Now, we all know deep slate is an annoying block to mine, but when you're crazy like me, you decide to build your whole Hogwarts roof out of it. That being said, this beacon should hopefully help speed up the process just a little bit, even if it is still painfully slow. A whole Minecraft day got us just under a shulker box, but in this case, it's a small part of the roof, and that should be enough, I believe. I spent the next couple of days placing block after block of deep slate. I almost restarted and decided to change the shape of the roof, but in the end, I think it turned out decently. I was actually almost finished with the final layer when, yeah. Hey, at least I got to see my old base. I don't spend enough time here these days. Can't wait to come back and build Diagon Alley here, though. That's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, I grabbed some gear, crafted some rockets, and went back on a rescue mission. I really don't want to be losing my god gear, even if I have backup sets. I was met with more resistance than I expected, but unless I'm blind, I think I recovered everything. Anyway, day 64 was a productive day. Filled in the roof, mined out the inside roof to save us on some deep slate, and even repurposed those same blocks for the small jut-out roof in the bottom left. Whoever designed this building was a little wonky. Then again, they were wizards, so I can't say much. Finally, I filled in front of the clock tower as well. Filling it out makes it look a little bit better. Still not sure about the whole thing, though, honestly. Now that I've got the roof on the, Well, I'm just gonna call it the shed. Now that the shed was roofed, I decided I should probably build up the walls of it as well. I may have been a little bit backwards on that, but hey, I never said I was an architect, okay? Back to our old steady mud bricks, packed mud, and other assorted annoying blocks. When I got to the top, I figured I should probably throw in another gradient layer. So I built in some stone to break it up a bit, and then took that right up to the top of the front, almost dying along the way, following my usual pattern for the roofs of this building. I finally found a good reference angle of the shed, threw in a little trim, and then turned my attention to some bigger fish, the many windows lining the roof. I could totally edit out my turmoil and pain at this point, but I want you to know, I rebuilt a bunch of these about 4 times to find the correct placement. This first day of working on them, I thought I liked the placement, so I built up 4 of them thinking I was doing something special. After I committed 2 days straight to banging those bad boys out, and to be fair, at the time they looked kind of cool, but I honestly wasn't considering the windows that had to line up with those lower down the roof. And unfortunately, I later discovered that they just fell out of place position there. I eventually found the placement I was happy with and built out the windows downward, and to my surprise, it actually look decent. The windows really added a level of detail to the build that makes it stand out as something that is a bit more realistic. Dare I say, I love them? No, that's too far. They're only windows, Plato. We may have just spent 4 days building up some windows, but guess what? There are many more on the backside. In fact, more on the backside than on the front. But I have an advantage. I already know the placement considering they were basically mirroring the front windows, so I knocked those glassed holes out real quick. I started punching out all the holes so they could become the actual windows they knew they could be. But when I put some glass in there, I realized I think I could up the detail just a little bit if I threw in some lanterns as well. So I found some in the crazy mess that is the central tower. I threw the lanterns in there and added the glass in the front, and I guess it looked all right, but no time to stare at the past circ, time to attack the windows on the walls. To the window, to the wall. Last time I worked on these, I couldn't decide what height to put them in at, so as a result, it's a bit of a mess. So first I started moving the interior floors to the proper spots. Adding in those floor layers to build the windows out will be essential, and it'll also give us a starting point when we want to work on the interior, assuming I can ever get crazy enough to do an interior. But as I started building this out, I realized a grave flaw. I was creating a mob farm, and that means we're gonna need a boatload of torches. I have a stash of random crap in the central tower, so I chopped up a bunch of coal, and now I have way more torches than I know what to do with. Day 4,774 was a whirlwind. You know when you get in the flow and you just lose yourself? Yeah, that was me. Busting out windows, lighting up the place, it was madness. I literally forgot to sleep. That was on 0 coffee. By the end of the day, I added every single window. It looked okay, I think. The next day I was there admiring my work, doing a little bit of lighting, when I finally realized the fatal flaw in the design that I had unwittingly caused only 10 days prior: the wall. It was meant to be indented just like the front, and how did I not see it? How could I have been so stupid? Dread filled my veins, my heart slowed, and thus began the saga of completely rebuilding the whole back wall. I wish I could say this is the first time this has happened with this castle, but the project is looking okay, at least, I think. What do you think? Comment how you feel, unless you're feeling pain, darkness, or despair. In that case, I don't want to know. 9 days. That is how many days it took me to right the wrong that I so casually caused to my build. Let this be a warning to all. When building a large building, don't be dumb. Be smart. But if you are going to be dumb, at least be willing to fix the big dumb, you know? Okay, I think I lost enough brain cells from this conversation. Now that I had moved the wall ever so painfully over by 2 blocks, I began the detailing. I added some stairs to make the jut out natural, and then blended the top with a nice waving andesite gradient. In the end, it looked okay. The bright side, I was finally able to put back in the floor outlines around the inside and light it up. Now this looks pretty okay. We are now 35 days into the 50, and pain continues. I must mirror the windows that we built on this side as well. Did I find a picture of this side of the castle to confirm? No, I didn't. I couldn't find any. Will we probably find pictures later on that says I did these windows completely incorrectly? Yes, probably, but I did them, and that is something special. Anyway, windows in, I did that thing where I stare at the work I did for too long, feeding my inner ego, you know? It looked okay. Could be better. But what I realized was that I could use a little more detail in this wall. Looking back at the grand staircase tower I built before, I realized that I used some polished andesite to add a little scattered brick look. I like that, so I knew what I must do. The journey took me thousands of blocks through dimensions, and finally I made it into the end of the game. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. I'm glad I could beat the game. That was cool. No, I'm just kidding. We must continue. I have this thing in the end. It's a ship with a bunch of people on it. They like to give me stuff sometimes. Turns out they give me some polished andesite. Very useful considering that's exactly what I needed right at this moment. I ran as fast as I could back to Hogwarts Hogwarts and found myself happily placing gray block. Wow. Like I haven't been placing gray blocks this whole video, Plato. These ones were different, okay? It looks okay, I think. Day 4,787, more gray blocks. Very exciting. On day 4,788, things took a turn for the worse. It was time to face my attention to the face of the clock. I knew this was going to be painful when I started. I didn't know how painful, however. I did eventually find a shape that I was somewhat happy with, but the problem is it felt almost 2D. Like it was just a hole. It needed some dimension to make me even slightly happy. The next day I tried a method of giving the depth that ended up being a bust, and I completely scrapped it. Walls weren't going to be the answer to this problem. With only 10 days left in the video, I knew the pressure was on. There was no way I was going to leave this as such an ugly spot for the thumbnail. I needed something solid. I tried a couple of other looks before I settled on a simple set-in design. This looked okay. I was happy to move forward with it, basically just insetting the circle I had come up with and letting the natural pushback be the ridges of the clock. Having found a decent spot with the actual tower, I then needed to clean up and shape the arch sitting just below it. I diddle-daddled around for a little while before I found something that sort of represented the reference pictures I had. I think what I ended up with looks okay. It became very apparent how annoying it is building things that are very far up in the air. The amount of rockets I went through was insane. On day 4,792, I didn't realize until it was too late that my hard drive had filled up and I didn't record hardly anything for basically 2 days straight. But what you missed was I started outlining the shape of the courtyard and deciding on the dimensions. The progress picked up on the courtyard. I made a hard decision to raise the floor by about 10 blocks, and then from there it came down to finding a look that was somewhat correct. But also this is Minecraft, and so obviously I had to make some compromises on the details. I got a little farther filling out the courtyard wall when I remembered that with only 5 days I had left a pretty significant part of the tower undone. There is a large tower right on the top and a smaller one right at the front. So I quickly decided I should finish these up. After all, it adds some detail and make the project feel much more finished. I worked through the night designing the roof and the walls. At that point, I admired my work a little bit, then knocked out the smaller tower in the front as well. It was a little annoying, but I ended up looking all right in the end. I must admit, with all the windows lit up like they are, the clock tower actually looks a little cool in the nighttime. I'm pretty happy with it. I grabbed a few cinematic shots before I made my way to my creeper farm. I knew I needed a couple days of AFK time after draining myself of all my rockets working on this tower. After all, how was I going to get around for the next video? And so we make it to our final day in this 50-day video. I crafted up a few rockets for the next video, took in a few views of the actually pretty good build we came up with here, felt my ego grow inside of me, allowing the dark side to take hold. Maybe I'll become a dark lord. Maybe I'll... Hold up. Guys, should I make a 100-day video? You tell me. Thank you so much for all my Patreon supporters for making this and all of my videos possible. If you want to become one, you can see all of my videos early and get this world download. Anyway, thanks guys. Peace.